My fiancé admitted, "I slept with your friend." I said, "Thanks for letting me know." Then I kicked them both out of my house and sent their photos to everyone. 3 days later, her pastor called me. I'm a 32-year-old guy. For the last 6 months, I felt like I'm clawing my way back to that age from a place much older and colder. It happened on a Tuesday. I remember the absurd detail of it all. I just landed a significant commission check, the kind that makes you feel like the world is finally tilting your way. I was in my home office, the glow of the screen illuminating a surprise I was booking, a ridiculously overpriced cabin for a weekend trip for my fiancée Hannah. Marriage in 6 months, life on track. She appeared in the doorway, a ghost at the feast. She had a look I'd never seen before, a toxic cocktail of pity and fear. My stomach tightened. My first thought was car trouble, a bounced check, something mundane. How laughably optimistic. "What's up?" I asked, quickly minimizing the booking website. She twisted the ring I'd given her, a nervous tic I used to find endearing. "Ethan, I need to be completely honest with you." Honesty. The word sounded foreign in her mouth. I messed up," she stammered, her voice a thin thread. "I slept with someone." The words didn't register at first. They hovered in the air, unreal. It was like my brain had been unplugged. No rage, no sudden flash of heat. Just a profound, hollow silence that swallowed every other thought. A void. "Okay," I heard myself say. My voice was unnervingly steady. "Who?" She flinched as if I'd shouted. "It doesn't matter. It was a mistake. I love you." "It matters to me, Hannah. Who was it?" The tears started then. Big, theatrical drops that felt rehearsed. "It won't happen again, I swear. We can get past this." "Who?" I repeated. The word was a stone. She choked on a sob and finally spat it out. "Terry. Terry. My best friend since we were 15. The man who was supposed to stand beside me as my best man. The same Terry who was currently lounging on my couch, supposedly getting back on his feet after falling on hard times. The same Terry who'd accepted a $2,000 loan from me 2 months prior. The pieces didn't just click into place, they fused together with the heat of a welding torch, creating something monstrous and ugly. I didn't yell. The void inside me was too vast for sound. I just nodded. "Thanks for letting me know." I stood up and walked into the living room. Terry looked up from my TV, a bag of my favorite chips in his lap. He saw my face, then he saw Hannah's tear-streaked one behind me, and the lazy smirk he wore as a default expression curdled. He knew. "Terry," I said, the calmness in my voice scaring even me. "Get your things. You have 5 minutes." "Ethan, buddy, just let me explain," he pleaded, scrambling to his feet. "There is nothing to explain. You have 4 minutes." I walked to the front door and opened it wide, letting the evening air spill in. Then I turned to Hannah. "You too. Grab what you need for tonight. Get out." "Ethan, please," she wailed, her voice escalating into a shriek. "This is my home too." I corrected her, the first flicker of ice forming over the numbness. "This is my house. The deed is in my name. The mortgage payments come from my account. I bought this place 5 years before I met you. You are a guest whose welcome has expired." 3 minutes. The next few minutes were a chaotic scramble of them grabbing jackets and bags, Hannah sobbing about how I was being cruel and unreasonable. I remained by the open door, a statue of their making. As she passed me to leave, she turned, her face a mask of righteous indignation. "You're really gonna throw 5 years away over one little mistake?" "It wasn't a little mistake, Hannah," I said, looking from her to Terry, who was cowering on the porch. "And it wasn't one mistake. It was 1,000 tiny ones that led to this. Now get out." She stalked out onto the lawn, and then in a final, pathetic act of defiance, she ripped the key to my house off her keychain and threw it onto the grass. It landed with a soft thud. I watched it fall. Then I closed the door, locked the deadbolt, and leaned my forehead against the cool wood. The silence was deafening. I didn't drink. I didn't break anything. I went to my office computer, my movements slow and deliberate. I'd installed a couple of security cameras a while back after a package went missing. One covered the front porch, one covered the living room. I'd been meaning to take the living room one down for privacy. The irony was corrosive. I pulled the footage. I didn't have to look far. There they were. On my couch. The couch Terry had been sleeping on. Multiple times. The casual intimacy was worse than the act itself. I took a few screenshots, carefully selecting ones that clearly showed both of their faces but were just shy of being pornographic. The betrayal was the point, not the sordid details. Then, with a cold, clear purpose, I created a group chat. Our parents, our siblings, the entire wedding party, our closest mutual friends. I titled it, Important Wedding Update. I uploaded the pictures. I added a simple, undeniable caption. The wedding is off. Hannah has been sleeping with my best man, Terry, in my house. Please direct any and all questions to them. I would appreciate it if everyone gave me some space for a while. Then I blocked every single number in that group. I powered down my phone, cutting myself off from the explosion I had just triggered. The next morning, I found the tea she'd thrown, glinting in the dew-covered grass. I picked it up and put it in my pocket. I called a locksmith and had the locks changed by noon. I systematically went through the house, bagging up every trace of them. Her clothes, his borrowed video games, the toothbrush she kept in my bathroom. I left it all in black trash bags on the curb. It's been 3 days. My sister found a way to message me on my laptop. I'm so sorry, Ethan. We're all here for you when you're ready. What they did is unforgivable. It was a small comfort. This morning, a voicemail popped up on my freshly activated phone from a number I didn't recognize. I let it play. The voice was smooth, paternal, and deeply concerned. It was Pastor Gerald, Hannah's family pastor, the man who was supposed to marry us. He said he needed to speak with me urgently. About grace, about forgiveness, and about the significant, non-refundable financial contribution Hannah's parents had made towards the wedding venue. I haven't called him back. I'm drinking my coffee, and the numbness is finally receding. In its place is a knot of something cold, hard, and heavy. It's the clarity of a man who has lost everything and has nothing left to lose. They think this is about one night. They think this can be fixed with tears and prayers. They have no idea what this is about. Update 1. It's been 2 weeks of living in the fallout crater of my own life. The silence I initially craved has been replaced by a low-level hum of digital harassment and the slow grinding gears of consequence. I did call Pastor Gerald back. I decided to face the music, or at least hear what tune they were playing. The conversation was a masterclass in sanctimonious pressure. He spoke of human failing, God's grace, and the sanctity of commitment. I just made non-committal noises until he got to the point. Ethan, he said, his voice dripping with syrupy concern, Hannah's parents, as you can imagine, are beside themselves. They put down a rather substantial non-refundable deposit on the venue. $20,000. In the spirit of Christian charity, and given you were the one to officially cancel the proceedings, they were hoping you might see fit to reimburse them. I took a slow sip of my water. Pastor, I said, keeping my voice even. I didn't cancel the wedding. A breach of contract canceled the wedding. Their daughter's actions were the breach. The deposit is the price of that action. It's not my debt to pay. He pushed back, suggesting I was acting out of vengeance. I let him talk for a moment before I cut in. Pastor, the pictures I sent were the polite version. Me acting on vengeance would look very, very different. Please tell the family that the matter of the deposit is between them and their daughter. I hung up before he could respond. Next came the wave of texts and DMs from burner accounts. Hannah's were a roller coaster of sobbing apologies, then vicious accusations. Hannah, you've ruined my life. My own mother's looking at me with disgust. This is your fault. You had no right to share my private moments. I'm talking to a lawyer about this. I put 5 years into us. I made that house a home. You owe me for that. I'm entitled to half. Then Terry, whose entitlement was flavored with a pathetic sort of whining. Bro, you got me suspended from my job. My boss, your uncle, is pissed. You gotta call him and fix this. S'mon, man. That 2K was a gift. You know it was. I got nothing now. I took all of it, the threats, the demands, the whining, and forwarded them to a man my friend recommended. A lawyer whose nickname is the Shark. In our first meeting, I was a wreck. The composure I'd maintained had cracked, and I paced his office, a bundle of raw nerves and quiet rage. I told him everything. He just listened, steepled his fingers, and a slow, cold smile spread across his face. Good, he said when I was done. Anger is good. It's fuel, but we will be methodical. We will be surgical. He cost a fortune, but in that moment he felt priceless. The first letter from Hannah's newly hired lawyer arrived a few days later. It was everything she'd threatened. A claim of common law marriage, a demand for half of my assets, the house, savings, investments, and an additional claim for emotional distress due to the public shaming. The shark just laughed. "This is amateur hour," he said before drafting a response so brutal it probably singed the paper. It outlined my sole ownership of the property from long before our relationship, the lack of any joint accounts, and a clear legal precedent in our state. He also included a polite but firm notice that should she proceed, all evidence, including the full, unedited video footage of her private moments with Terry, would be submitted as evidence and would thus become public record. We're waiting for their next move. My uncle, after a brief investigation, officially fired Terry. The reason cited was gross unprofessional conduct creating a hostile and reputationally damaging work environment. It was clean, corporate, and final. I feel like I'm playing a game I never asked to join. It's costing me money I'd saved for a wedding, and sleep I can't lose. They think they're the victims. They're about to learn what real consequences feel like. Update 2. The past couple of weeks have been a slog. The initial clean shock has given way to a messy, attritional battle. My perfect revenge turned out to be much more complicated, and honestly, more draining than I ever imagined. Hannah's lawyer didn't back down immediately. They sent a second, nastier letter. It accused me of coercive control and claimed the photos were a violation of privacy laws, threatening to countersue me into oblivion. It was mostly bluff and bluster, but it was stressful. The shark told me to ignore it. "They're throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks," he said. "The problem for them is, the wall is Teflon." Still, seeing those accusations in print, knowing they were shopping them around, made me sick. The legal bills started to pile up, a constant, draining reminder of this mess. Then came the GoFundMe. It was titled, "Help Us Rebuild After Cruel Betrayal." The narrative was pure fantasy. I was a possessive monster. Hannah had suffered a momentary lapse under the strain of my emotional abuse. Terry was an innocent friend I'd turned on. They claimed I'd thrown them out into a winter storm. It was a mild autumn evening, and were trying to raise $10,000 for a deposit on an apartment. A few of their clueless friends and her more distant relatives actually donated. Seeing their names, people who had been to my barbecues, felt like a fresh stab of betrayal. My first instinct was pure rage. I wanted to plaster the link everywhere with a massive takedown. Instead, I took the shark's advice, be the calm, factual one. I made a small donation and posted a comment with a link to a public Dropbox folder, just as I'd planned. But within an hour, the comment was deleted and I was blocked from commenting again. They were monitoring it. Plan A failed. Time for Plan B. This was where it got messy. I couldn't fight them on their own turf. I had to go around them. I started with Hannah's aunt, a woman named Doris, who I'd always found to be sharp and no nonsense. I didn't just forward a link, I called her. It was one of the hardest calls I've ever made. She was initially defensive of her family. "Ethan, I know you're hurting," she said, "but Hannah's parents are saying you had a breakdown, that you made this all up to get out of the wedding." My blood ran cold. I wasn't just fighting Hannah and Terry, I was fighting a whole counter-narrative spun by her parents to save face. "Doris, I understand why you'd think that," I said, my voice tight with the effort of staying calm. "All I'm asking is that you look at something for me. I'm going to text you a link. It contains evidence, bank statements, text messages, and a very short, non-explicit video clip. Please, just look at it." I could hear her skepticism. There was a long pause. "Fine," she said. I sent the link to my carefully curated Dropbox folder, the screenshot of my loan to Terry, a transcript of the voicemail from Pastor Gerald about the deposit, the unhinged demanding texts from Hannah, and the 30-second silent video clip of them kissing on my couch while I was away at a work conference, the timestamp clearly visible. I didn't hear from her for the rest of the day. I was a nervous wreck, thinking I'd overplayed my hand, that I'd just alienated the one person in her family who might have been an ally. The next morning, my inbox had an email from her. It just said, "I am so sorry, Ethan. They will not get away with this." Doris became my reluctant but devastatingly effective artillery. She didn't just forward the link, she sent it with her own commentary, expressing her disgust at her brother's lies and her niece's behavior. She sent it to the entire extended family, the church prayer group her sister-in-law was so proud of, and key figures in their social circle. The GoFundMe was taken down by the end of the day, not by my reporting, but because its creators were inundated with messages from furious family members who had seen the truth. They raised a grand total of $350, which I later heard they had to refund. Hannah's lawyer went silent. A week later, we received a formal notice that they were withdrawing their representation. The spaghetti hadn't stuck. The war of attrition was over. The cost was a few $1,000s in legal fees and a significant chunk of my sanity. But the truth was out, and it was doing its work without any more input from me. Final update. It's been 6 months. The dust has settled, leaving behind a landscape that is quiet but forever changed. I didn't win a glorious victory. I simply survived a war of my own making, and I have the scars to prove it. The legal loose ends tied themselves up. I won a default judgment against Terry for the loan, plus my legal fees. It's just a paper victory, as he has no money, but it's a permanent stain on his record. His parents sent me a check, which I tore up. The judgment was the point, not the money. Hannah and Terry imploded, as expected. Their relationship, forged in the cheap thrill of deceit, couldn't survive the harsh light of reality. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that the stress, the lack of money, and the constant blame game led to a spectacular flameout in the parking lot of the seedy motel they were living in. Terry moved back in with his parents and is reportedly delivering pizzas. A fittingly circular journey for someone with no forward momentum. Hannah's parents sold their house and moved 2 states away. The social humiliation, orchestrated so effectively by their own sister, was too much for their fragile egos to bear. They were pillars of a community that now saw them as liars who had raised a cheater. And Hannah? She landed in the one place she probably never expected, under the thumb of her Aunt Doris. After the breakup with Terry, with no money, no friends, and a disgraced family, she had nowhere else to go. Doris took her in, but not out of pity. It was a boot camp for humility. Hannah now works a full-time, 40-hour week as a cashier at a home improvement store to pay her aunt rent. I'm told she despises every second of it, feeling the work is beneath her. The entitlement is still there. A pilot light of bitterness in a life that has run out of gas. I had one final bizarre encounter. About a month ago, I was in a grocery store across town. As I rounded the corner into the frozen foods aisle, I saw her. She was staring at a case of microwave dinners, looking tired and pale under the harsh fluorescent lights. Her clothes were cheap, her hair was unkempt. She looked small. She saw me, and a flicker of pure panic crossed her face. 6 months ago, I would have felt a surge of triumphant rage. But in that moment, I felt nothing. A profound, empty nothing. She was just a stranger who looked vaguely like someone I used to know. I turned my cart around and walked away. There was nothing left to say. As for me, the journey back has been slow. I sold the house and its ghosts. I have a smaller condo downtown now that is entirely my own. The first few months were hard. There were nights I'd wake up in a cold sweat, the anger so fresh it felt like it was happening all over again. There were days I felt like a fool for ever trusting them. I've spent a lot of time with my real friends, my sister, and a good therapist. I didn't get perfect revenge. I got a messy, expensive, and emotionally taxing lesson in consequences. I made mistakes, I almost let my rage get the better of me, and I relied on the help of others. I wasn't a hero in a story. I was just a man trying to clean up a mess he didn't make. They didn't just ruin their own lives. They took a chunk out of mine that will never grow back quite the same. But I'm rebuilding. In a small keepsake box in my new closet, there is one item from my old life. It's not a photo or a memento of good times. It's a single, slightly tarnished house key, the one Hannah threw on the lawn. I picked it up that next morning, a small, cold piece of metal that represented so much. It's a reminder, not of what I lost, but of what I reclaimed. It reminds me that I hold the keys to my own life, my own home, and my own peace. And I learned the hard way to be much more careful about who gets a copy.